Hey there, everybody. Welcome back, Need Boost Podcast. Bel Air here. You know me, I'm sitting with somebody who you probably know a little better, and that's Feer. Vin Lacy. He's been around the block. You've heard of him. Fear, do you know how many YouTube videos you've uploaded? I'll tell you. 1,300.
Um,
Oh, I beat you to
okay.
the punch.
I was gonna try and
1,300.
guess. I was gonna try and guess because I look at my social blade. That's probably where you pulled it from, but I look at it somewhat frequently. But anyways, 1,300.
That would have been smarter to check your social blade. I didn't even know that was an option. I counted on YouTube, and I
Oh
told
wow.
you. See, this is some of the old man math that I get stuck in. Same thing happened with we were talking about prize pools. Over 61 grand has flowed through Fear tournaments, show matches, whatever it is. So not only are you a fixture in the 1v1 community, but you're just out here, you're sharing the wealth, you know? Everybody who comes through Fear can get some money. I saw some tournaments down to like $10. Sorry to those people, but that's more money than I've made off Rocket League. So we love to see
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I started with a lot smaller prize pools. I'd like to think about the number, because I've never sweated at all giving the prize money away. From the very beginning, it's never bothered me. But then when I see the big number, I'm like, wait, if I could have just held on to that somehow, 60,000. But truly, it's impossible to like evaluate the worth of what that has given me. So, I mean, I think it's given me way more than that value. Just incentivizing players to play and stuff. So it doesn't bug me, but man, when I look at it back, I'm like, wait, 60,000, that's a lot.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because there's a bunch I want to talk about with you. Fear Fiesta happened. Of course, we have the off season. 1v1 is something that I'd be remiss to bring you on and not talk about that. But I want to start first and foremost talking about the 1,000 day streak, 1,000 video streak. You would put out an excellent video that I recommend people go check out where you kind of talk about it and take us under the hood a little bit. But you said something interesting, which is giving that money away did leaps and bounds more for you than if you would have kept it. And that's really interesting because I was just thinking about how oh, running that through your channel actually made your channel what it is. And to that point, um, something that you talked about when you were discussing the daily uploads was that the split to kind of go daily happened when you talked about wanting to be able to control your results as opposed to these kind of external factors of how many views you get or likes or whatever it might be. You were behind the steering wheel of I can put out content every day. I know it was over 2 years ago, but if you could take us back for a moment about how you kind of got to that mentality. Were there certain, recurring thoughts that you were thinking about with your results, or just take us back to what led you to begin the 1,000 day journey?
I wasn't succeeding as much as I wanted to. I actually have pulled up on my second monitor here, just running through. Like I keep these spreadsheets of goals for myself because I don't know, maybe it's just something I pulled over from engineering,
Sure.
that I've done. But the first one that I ever did, I'm looking at right now, is was set up to like specifically look at followers and views and growth, and I was expecting a certain amount of like exponential growth that people talk about. And so I when I didn't hit that and when I didn't see it or when it slowed down at all, it would bum me out big time. And so and I was also back in the day when I was first starting, I was very like what's the word? I felt like I deserved it more. I don't know if I actually did, but I felt like I was putting out pretty good stuff. And it's easier to say looking back now that maybe I was putting out decent stuff, but I'm sure I still thought I was doing better than I really was because I just started out, and like going back and look at my old videos, I'm like, okay, they're not as good as I think I thought they were at the time.
Yeah.
But I basically realized it's not working as well as I wanted to. I need to change what I'm going to judge my success by. And I had noticed that there's a couple different people that have done this kind of streak stuff. So at the time, I had started watching Ludwig, which everyone knows now. He doesn't
Yep.
do Rocket League stuff, but just huge content creator who had a streak as well. He uploaded every day. And then somebody who got really big in the scene, grinding through just like not necessarily YouTube videos, but streams, is Widow. And
Mm.
Widow just like was live 24/7 every single day, all the time, and just was so committed to that element of it. And you can always do that. You can always just go live again, whether people are going to show up or not, and you can always just make sure there's always a video. So it happened on accident. I actually started the streak telling myself that I would do every other. I said, okay, as long
Mm,
as I do every other, I'm good. And then for the first month or so, I noticed I was doing every day because I think I just run a tournament or something, one of my early tournaments. So I had like a bunch of backlogs, so I wasn't going to spread them out over multiple days. So I was putting them out every day, and then I realized, okay, my streak is now a month into the year because I started at like the new year. Well, actually, I think it had continued for the previous year. I intended to start at the new year, but basically I thought, why not just keep doing it every day? This isn't like overkill. It doesn't feel like overkill at least. So maybe just instead of every other day, every day. And then I've been doing that for a long time. It finally caught up to me a little bit. And that's why, I ended it recently. But yeah, the mindset was, what was the original question again?
No, I mean, no, you kind of hit it. I mean, there's so many questions I have off of that, and like some of them are selfish, right? Like you creating YouTube videos, especially RLCS, is running in the same vein. I feel like something that I run up against all the time is maybe over criticizing the content, or maybe being too ready to pivot on things if they do or don't work. But you seemed as though you hit that 1,000 and you were like, or you started the streak and you were like, let's just see how far it goes. I mean, were you checking in on that as you went along, or you were just like, hey, this is still working, like let's roll? I'm sure there you hit at least a spot or two where it was very challenging to keep the streak going. So like I- it's many questions, but did you consider
Sure.
pivots? Like what, I guess just what is the mindset that allowed you to get to 1,000 videos? Because that's incredibly
Um,
impressive.
so for me, in terms of like pivoting the content or whether things were working, I felt like I had a pretty good vision of what good content was
Mm,
when I first started streaming, and I wasn't doing YouTube videos. It was just playing Rocket League Ranked, which I think a ton of people have done, whether they're playing video games and stream. And I really didn't have any intention to like succeed in any way. It was just as like a stress relief
sure.
when I started working. And then eventually I had pretty much been getting stressed playing on stream and getting frustrated too often. And I thought, okay, why don't I just switch to this thing that never makes me mad? I can't lose at running a show match really. So I would just start doing that and start doing that exclusively. I did it back and forth, and I said, screw it. I'm just gonna only make the stream that, because I knew that as myself as a viewer, I would not want to watch a stream that mixed in their champion gameplay, which is what
Mm,
mine was at the time. It's like I don't never care about that. Like if there's show matches going on, then I'd be interested in that. But if you try and force me to watch this other thing, I'm not about that. So I decided I'm going to commit to that. And obviously, Johnny Boy existed. Johnny Boy existed
sure.
doing pretty much the same stuff that I did. He was my favorite guy to watch. I knew his content was good. It was a proven model. I felt like there was space to have more all the time. People in like comments would be like, I can't believe Johnny's holding up the entire one scene by himself. He's the man. At the time, I was very bitter because I was like, oh, I'm trying to too. Why is nobody watching my stuff?
I exist.
But, but yeah, but at the end of the day, I just stuck to it. I knew that it could work in theory. There was a moment in time where I felt like I'd been doing it for like a full year straight, and I'd been pretty consistent,
Mm,
and it wasn't picking up in any meaningful way. And that was probably the time that I was closest to giving up. And then I don't know, it worked out. The big time that I started on like a streak that made it so that the success was enough to keep me going as well, because obviously the hard part is before you have any success, which I didn't for like a few years. I'd have to go look at my I think at least a full year where like it wasn't picking up as much as I wanted to. Like for
yeah.
example, I have like 5 or so viewers or 7 viewers when I was playing ranked, and then like maybe it was like 14 when I was doing these show matches. But I was like, man, I really feel like it could get more than that, and I did that for like maybe 7-8 months until I just got lucky. The way I see it is I got lucky. I talked to the players and stuff about it too, and they all say like, oh no, you would have done it eventually. You would have figured it out. But like my first big momentum swing that probably kept me going for pretty much ever since then is RJC is a guy in the Twitch community, or the Twitch viewing community, but he donates big to prize pools,
Mm,
and he offered me up $500 before I had a match and said you can use the $500 to go get at the best match you want. And I got Daniel versus AJ. And then when I uploaded that, I said, screw it. I'm going to make it look exactly like a Johnny thumbnail. I'm just going to commit to it. And people are going to click it thinking it's a Johnny thumbnail.
Yeah.
And that worked really well. And, I got a ton of momentum there. And then ever since then, I mean, Daniel is a big part of it. A bunch of players are a different part of it
Sure.
on the way, like to make it go up. But, I talked to the players and they say that I would have made it there eventually. But I'm not sure that I would have if it weren't for Daniel. Daniel, like getting that initial kickoff is probably the hardest once the ball gets rolling. And I think the ball never really starts rolling without Daniel. So that's why I'll always be a fan of that kid. But yeah, I mean, admittedly that was a tough part to keep it going. As far as the streak for 1,000 towards the end, like when I gave up on it, I just felt that it was no longer helping
Mm.
because for the longest time I just felt like it was helping me make sure I'm making stuff, put
Yep.
something out, you just rise, and then I felt like I was forcing videos, and I was just thinking about myself. Maybe I'm selfish in this way, but I was thinking about what would I enjoy to watch, and like if I had a channel that every once in a while was pushing out like a dud that like didn't really feel good, like would I watch the other videos, or would I be like, okay, this channel's standard is a bit under what I'd like? Whereas if maybe they just cut those out, and I was like, oh, this channel's always gives you something good, or
Yeah.
oh, I can always expect this level of quality. I decided that I was not reaching that quality that I wanted, and so just giving myself a break and not forcing a video every day might even be better. So the 1,000 days was really good because I'd never done anything before, and I started to learn what worked, and it forced me to just put pen to paper basically. And I decided to end it because I felt like I kind of understand what works now, and so I don't need to force that requirement on myself. But as soon as it starts not working or something, I'll go back. I'll go right back to making one every day if I have to. So
Yeah. And it's a big nice number, right? 1,000. It's like,
yeah.
that's a pretty good anchor to stop as well. And I just something that I did something very similar to you. I did an upload every day for a week. So we're basically the same in that way. But I remember from that experience being like, okay, these are the things that I do like, and these are the things that I don't like, and like trying to iterate as you were going. I know that the show match format is kind of just you show up and you're there for it, but I think that kind of undersells the work that you put into it. Were you iterating your process as you went along? Like if you watch the first video versus now, what are the biggest differences in what Fear is producing?
I got better at commentating, but that was never the focus because there were so many other things to focus on. I think that my goal from the very beginning was always I felt the best content was the best players.
Sure.
And the reality is, if you have a stream where nobody's really watching, even if I started again, and even if I was like a decent commentator or whatever, it's tough to get that momentum, that like social connection with players and trust. Really, I think there's a level of trust that if they're going to play on the stream now, they understand that it's a good quality match, that like it's something that people will enjoy. I think that matters to players, like even as much as prize pool, or maybe even way more than prize pool. But when all else is equal, I would still be adding money in, like $5 for every match to try and get people interested. But wait, I forgot what was the spur of this question?
Just what changed with your process as you went
Oh,
along?
right.
The quality is
Yeah.
one thing of it, but
Yeah, I think that I got better players. I think that was the big thing because that was always the focus. Always find more people and always get the best possible games. And I was able to do that partially from like increasing prize pools or running bigger tournaments, and partially from I think the built trust over time with certain
sure.
players. That's why I always shout out the guys like Kinsey and Daniel and anybody who like adopted early, because it's really easy for everybody to just be like, that guy's lame. Like that guy's not. He's not worth my time. I'm overly skilled for him. I'm only going to do matches on the big channels or whatever. And so it's just those players who are willing to be like, actually, I just like playing enough that, or I like this guy enough that I'll do it on a match on his channel, give him a chance, and I basically get pulled up by those players. At
Sure.
least that's the way I saw it. So I think constantly moving towards closing the gap on certain players' skill level to where more and more people will be willing. Or sometimes RJC gives you $500 and then you can get AJ, who's never played on your channel, maybe even heard of you, but you say play one match for $500, and anybody's going to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll just see if I can win.
Yeah.
And so it's a mixture. I think I've stuck with the formula pretty consistent. One of the big changes was just realizing that one's fans want Johnny thumbnails. They don't want like anything else. They've been trained to have this one like style, and so sticking with that. But tiny refinements, nothing crazy. I wouldn't say has changed. People like tournaments. I noticed that. So trying to make as many like contextual matches, like it's a final of a tournament instead of just the same exact match done separately. People just get less hyped about it. So I don't know. I think luckily for me, the blueprint was out ahead of me with Johnny. Like he had already done it and shown how it could be good, and so I didn't stray too far from the proven path because I didn't think I needed to. I felt like that's what I wanted to do. That's what I thought was interesting. So.
Yeah, he had kind of already laid out the framework. I mean, Johnny, I'm sure, like a lot of others, is what brought me. He was my first, my first, seeing the RLCS in any form or fashion was Johnny Boy videos. And for the listener, actually, the way that I got Feer on this podcast was I got a $500 donation. And RJC said, "Get whoever you can on," and
no.
I checked around, but you were the only one who took the bait. No, just kidding.
That's not true, listeners.
It's not true. It was much more money that I had to give Feer.
No, I would never do it for only 500.
It's way too small beans. But you were talking about we talked a little bit beforehand about like players that you get onto the channel, and you've talked about it now. I think a lot of people probably don't give you the credit for just considering how many things go into it. The YouTube uploads is one thing, the streaming is one thing, but you also have a job as well. And the element that goes under the radar is just the logistics of reaching out to players, finding times, getting two people who can meet at a time where you can meet. Like, how do you go about organizing yourself in that way and reaching out to players? Now it's much easier, right? Because you just have this network, they all know you. It's probably kind of simple to connect the pieces in that way. But back at the outset, what was your strategy of going about setting things up and keeping yourself organized to actually get these show matches to happen?
The first show match I got was via Reddit. I went to Reddit. There's like not even of course you couldn't post something like this on the regular Rocket League channel or even the esports channel, but there's like a tournaments one or something that like has like 100 people that go to it or something. I don't know, like super small.
Sure.
And or like Rocket League Clashes might be the subreddit. I can't even remember. But I put up on there that I wanted to do a show match that I could give $10 as a prize to like the best possible players. I was hoping for as good as I could get. I got a couple top 200 players. And I think I did that at least for a couple. I did a lot of just trying to build the network. The biggest way is just open up the game, top 100, right click invite every single player and get like 90% of them, 95, 98 maybe even, like I get a couple accepts every time.
Yeah.
And what's wild is people who accept, they're usually down to play. Like for everyone who accepted, like almost all of them said, yeah, let's do a match. But I don't blame anyone for not accepting because I don't really accept invites now.
Sure.
Random invite, no idea who they are. Especially if I'm in the top 100 and I'm getting like just random invites from everyone who's opening the game, like I would probably decline a ton of them. But for whatever reason, some people accepted them, and I know it wasn't because at the time that they had any idea who I was. But I told them like, hey, I'll do these matches and I'll put some money up. Like, would you be down? And over the course of doing all the matches, I've tried many times to like make it smart. Like, oh, maybe I'll set up a Discord or something, and then like I can just ping people, and then people can like sign up, or maybe like some way to take that work out of my hands. And it never worked. It never worked. You always have to it really just is me pretty much on my Steam friends list or like Twitter and messaging people saying, do you want to play? This is when I can play. Or this is when I could do it. The toughest times were when I was working in person still and wasn't working at home. And so I had a small window, and I would try and set them up beforehand, and I'd try and ask either like a full day or many hours beforehand. And that would often get stuff canceled or wouldn't work out. It's been easier since working from home because for the most part, I'll just like I schedule hour out, 2 hours out, or like
Yeah.
right now. Like I see they're in the game. But yeah, the reality is in terms of the work that I do, I tell a lot of people in person that like the main work is just like wrangling players. Like that's really the most of it, like setting up a match, getting people. And then the easy part is like once I'm live and the matches are starting, like, oh, that's no big deal. I could do that anytime. Or if I happen to have a tournament, like the hardest part about the tournament is not doing the stream where I actually commentate. It's like finding the times that they could do it. And you know, I mean, it's never there's no trick. There's no trick there. I wish there was, and I try and tell other people too, because I see people be like, oh, maybe I'll like I wanted these matches. I'll set up this thing where like people will sign up for. I'm like, dude, you just have to be a pest, man. You just have to, if you want someone to play, like you just have to ask them and you have to reach out and you have to do individual work, like talking to people, and otherwise you just don't get anywhere. So I don't know. It's I wish there were some tricks, but the reality is just over time, getting people on friends lists and messaging them if they want to play, finding out when they can.
It seems like, unfortunately, that's the case with a lot of things where I'm like, this is a question I have about life. And you go to ask somebody who's an expert and they're like, yeah, there's no trick. You just kind of got to do it. And it's like, ah, well, okay. I thought I'd have some shortcut or something, but there it is. And you had uh, stepped on Johnny's turf isn't the term I want to use, but you came into
Sure.
1v1s where he was already kind of the king. Not only the king, he
Sure.
was kind of the only entity in some respects as you start to
Mhm.
show up. As you see people now enter the show match realm, do you still feel as though there is room for growth? Do you feel territorial probably isn't the right word, but how do you kind of view additional show matches that are occurring? Do you think that it is
I try
good
and
for the
shut them all
scene?
down.
Yeah, that's what I had reached out. I was like, hey, do you want to do a show match? And you were like, I will find you. Yeah.
No, I think there's room. I think so. One of the biggest things that I realized is that when the so I learned a lot. I learned a lot, and I've already mentioned this a little bit before, and this is maybe the first place I've kind of mentioned it, but I felt very looking back. I realized I felt very entitled, in the sense that I felt like what a lot of people do with streamers who are successful or like YouTubers, like it's like you want that success and you see them and you say to yourself, that person's lucky, or that person like is lucky that they're already ahead because that's the only reason why it works for them now. And so I definitely remember having that feeling when I was trying to enter. It's like, man, I could do it just as good as Johnny. It's just he's already ahead of me,
Yeah.
and I'll never be able to break through. And then as I go through the whole process of like becoming somebody who maybe one day, because I'm pretty close, could do it as a job, I realized looking back, like it's not that Johnny has a stranglehold, or it's not that these other people are keeping everyone out and the rich get richer. It's actually like been super hard. And I realize now why there aren't other Johnnies. Cause I'm thinking there's, when I wanted to start, I'm like, why is it just him? Why is there no one else? Not just me. Why is there not anyone else? It must be because it's like impossible to get going. And then after doing it all, I've realized, oh, it's because it's super hard. Like it's super hard and it's a ton of work and you have to stay committed really long time. And it's like, you really are just doing it for the love of the game for so long that that's why no one else cares about it that much. No one else like wants to do it that bad. And the fact that to be fair, I might have stayed bitter forever if I had never found success. I would have been like, look, I tried forever. I tried for multiple years and it still didn't work. I blame the system. But even then, I think I would have been wrong. I think the reality is, if you put in the work, you can get there, and you have to be really honest with how good your product is. That can be really hard to assess, and I
Sure.
would say that I've never done a great job of it, because as I move on, always in the moment, I feel like I'm putting out comparable or perfect stuff, and then I look back and go, okay, it wasn't perfect, and I see how it wasn't perfect now, even though I thought it was then. Whether it's my own commentating or any part of it, production value, anything. So all that to be said, when I see new people start up, I think there's room. I mean, a lot of people say now, I think people would have said it before. I'm not sure if they would have, but when Johnny was running, I bet you there are people who said, oh, well, I mean, it's only 1v1. Like, there's not really enough space for anyone
Sure.
else to do it. So that's why. And so I proved that there is more space, I think. And so everyone goes, oh, well, now it's full. Now it's full. Now two people are doing it. It's full. So is it actually full? I don't know. I don't think so. I certainly don't want to discourage anybody from trying. But I basically try and tell them, because a lot of people reach out saying, they want to do the same thing. And I say, you can go for it. I mean, you have to just do it for a long time. You have to give people a good product. And, I can't guarantee it'll work or whatever, but I think there's still space. And one thing I was scared about, and that I think maybe you're like covering on, is like, would I be eating away at Johnny's like steak? Like, would my success be at his downfall? Like, would I take a portion of it? I don't think that's the case. You can only really truly verify by asking him, but I don't think he would think that's the case either. Um, I would think, if anything, like, if more people add more like quality streamers or quality people casting and setting up matches, add more to the scene, I would think it could only just grow it, because it just makes, as a viewer, like, now it's so much easier to consume, instead of before you're waiting 3, 4, 5 days, and then Johnny would go live and he'd have 2 matches, and then you have to wait another 3 days and maybe he'd have 2 matches. Now it's like real easy to consume, because there's a ton of good people who are trying to make matches. I would think it could work out and everyone could just grow bigger. But who knows? I mean, I can't say for sure. I would say people should just go for it. I mean, I went for it. The thing is, you have to just enjoy doing it, and because otherwise you just won't do it enough, or like long enough or well enough to have success, because you'll just burn out. Like, especially if you only care about the results. Whereas I just like really liked 1v1, and it was kind of cool to like see these people who hadn't played before, and I just had fun doing it, and it worked out.
Yeah, and you circled back to this sense of joy, love of the game. How is that, um, has that fluctuated over time? Has it grown? Has it diminished? I know for me personally, like there was a time and a place where I was watching so many replay reviews. I was just like, this, I love this, watching 3v3 replay reviews. This is my thing. I'm gonna watch every pro in every region and go all the way through. And then that kind of tapers off and comes back. But you're committed to 1v1s in a pretty strict way to keep this streak going. How has the game evolved for you personally? Do you have an increased love of watching 1v1s? Has it stayed steady the whole time? Has it waned at any point in time?
Yeah, it stayed fairly steady. I think it gets saturated now by uh my own like videos or streams more, because people will be like, did you watch this match that happened somewhere else? And before, the answer was always yes. Like,
Yeah,
I consumed
sure.
all the matches everywhere, but now I do enough watching it live and like working it, that it certainly fills up my 1v1
Bandwidth or
bar a
whatever.
lot
Yeah.
more. Yeah, bandwidth. Yeah, is a good word for it. It fills it up like to near full, to where I'm not like watching from beginning to end every other match that's happening everywhere. Um, but as far as like love for the game, as I get more ingrained in watching them, and I've seen like thousands and thousands and have analyzed many, it's like almost a way increased appreciation for outliers, and maybe a slightly decreased appreciation for um the same old, which
Sure.
is just to say that like when a player comes around who's doing something different, whether that, even if they're not necessarily like winning a ton, like they don't have to just be winning all the time, but even just doing something different than what we've seen 1,000 times before, there's just as much hype on that, if not even more, when that something like that happens. And maybe a slightly decreased, I mean, I still enjoy it no matter what, but like, a match between players who are just running the same things we've seen before a million times, it's like, maybe I feel like I've seen it all a little bit in that case. But luckily, the players at the top are just always pushing the game in some way. So certainly, if you're getting a top match, it's like you don't have to worry about that at all. It's just if you maybe go back in time or something, and take a lesser match, it can be a little bit less exciting. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I still enjoy it.
it seems like a lot of the players at the top are the same in 1v1. There's a lot of crossover between 1v1 success and 3v3 success, although it's not a completely linear line. Like somebody like Moxie hasn't necessarily seen massive RLCS 3v3 success yet. Somebody like Raziers isn't necessarily at that level. I know that pros constantly talk about the benefits of 2v2 towards trying to improve yourself to get to that professional 3v3 stage, but I know you have no bias around this. What is the benefit or the kind of tether between 1v1 greatness and 3v3 greatness, if one exists?
I think that, I mean, a lot of times people will ask uh if they're getting better, or like if they're working on, like, should I work on ones or whatever if I want to get better, or should pros be working on ones? For the most part, I try not to sound like an expert on that, because I feel like I watch the players be great, and I don't necessarily feel like I can say with full confidence like this player is great because they worked
Sure.
on ones. But I think that you can play ones in a couple different ways, and there's a way in which you can play ones that you can't play the game, and you can't play it the same way in other modes. And I would say that that doesn't translate. It's like a very safer, grounded, I'm going to make as many smart, slow decisions as possible to prioritize winning this 1v1 game. And then there's players who play it like, I'm going to push the envelope and I'm going to try and, do crazy things, work on the edges of what's possible with mechanics while winning in 1v1. And those people, I feel like, are definitely translate. Everything that they're doing there and working on is going to translate. And it's all building this muscle memory and car control that you don't get from any other mode, because you're on ball all the time, or it's just you out there. But there's ways you could play 1v1 that are not improvement mindset. They're like, win now, win this one game I'm playing right now. I don't think that translates as well. There's a few players who play like that way. I don't think Moxie necessarily does it. He kind of has it a little bit, in that, he has the full range of ability, but maybe he more often than his counterparts will shift to like exclusively 1v1 strategies. But I think Moxie could convert it if he wanted to. I think he's creative enough. So yeah, I mean, I think players can and should play ones. Do I know for sure it's going to make them better? I think it probably has a lot to do with how they play it, than necessarily, how high they get rated, because you can kind of play a style that doesn't play towards that and still get highly rated.
Sure, in threes you can't go for these like giga flicks and like this super grounded like set defense, and like shadowing is different and everything. But there is
Mhm.
a lot of crossover, and that's what makes it really impressive when some of these players who we laud as these great 3v3 talents just kind of appear within 1v1. Like I didn't really know Zen had any 1v1 chops until he went on that crazy streak. Same goes for Vatira. We just saw beast mode over in the tournament over in Saudi, that it was like at Gamers 8, it escaped me, but it's just these players who show up and you're like, okay, I guess you're just a great Rocket League player. Like it seems like there's not always this direct translation, but there's some players who we've seen who are great in both. You had Fear Fiesta not too long ago. We saw Rawas walk away with the crown from that. How do you assess his success? Let me try and rearticulate the question. Rawas is the next in a string of great players from Mina, who have kind of ran 1v1 and seen that translate. Is there something in the water in Mina that sees us continue to produce these players? It's such a small fraction of people, but yet the actual talent that we see is a really high percentage. Is it just a communal thing similar to what we see with like the French Rocket League community, or is it aspiring to be the next O'Khaled? Like, what is it that we continue to see these players pop up?
I wish I knew.
Well, you're
I
the
wish I knew. I
expert.
mean,
The people are here for answers, Fear. I told them
yeah,
before you hopped on. I was like, guys, I'm gonna ask Fear. He's got all the knowledge we need. So just hold on for a second.
yeah, I wish I knew why the media guys are so good, or why they, I think there's some speculation on the fact that the way they play is reflective of the high ping. I wonder how much that has effect to do with it.
Mm,
I think it's probably more so the community, like you said, like the French community seems to be really strong, and while they have the best competition playing on EU servers, they also have a good support system to build their players up. It's probably the same. I think the language barrier, I mean, maybe like helps in that way, and that it like makes a very clear cut community, right? Of the people who are, speaking French, and maybe the same thing with Arabic, and the players moving up through the Middle East. But I wish I could tell you for sure. Somehow there's always some crazy new player who comes out of that region, and I don't know why North America doesn't have something similar. It felt like at some point we did. I don't know. I feel like we're seeing less brand new players coming out of maybe any region really.
Yeah.
But yeah, for any reason why it works so well for Rawas or the MENA region, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I wish I knew, but everyone could tell that there's always something exciting, to see from a player from Saudi Arabia. Basically, a lot of people will tune in, to find out any new name. Like, oh, new Saudi player, this guy's gonna be crazy. There's an assumption that he's good. So I know where you're coming from, but why is that? I don't know. It's hard to say. I wish I could tell you that I could bottle it up and give it to North America too, but I don't know the answer.
That's okay. We'll find out on the next episode. I have another question that might be hard for you to calculate, but I'm going to see if you can do your best. You have all these top names show up for show matches. When you're looking through the comment section, what players do you feel as though have the biggest, most rabid fan bases?
I mean, it's topical right now because I just had the NRG guys on or Justin on, but it's crazy how the NRG guys just continue to have, like, regardless of one's capability, like huge fandom. But a lot of the times it'll be top players who are good and don't give you any other access to their gameplay. So like when Khaled was as good as he was, he was like dominating best in the world and he didn't do any content and he was like mysterious almost. Like he didn't show up anywhere but like Johnny videos or, if I had him on a video. So I think people were like rabid for content of him. And so that they'll get pretty excited about it. And anybody who's been at the top for a long time, like when I think of those kind of fan bases, like First Killer definitely has one over in North America for just dominating for so long. He also doesn't really put out a ton of content. So it's kind of like the only place people can see him. But I think for the most part, people pick up on names of anybody who has been clearly the best for any extended period of time. And so for a while, like for example, I mean, maybe I shouldn't use examples for people who don't have as much hype as they maybe should, but there's lots of top players who can compete with the best, but because they haven't had a clear moment in which they've been the best for like an extended period of time, they haven't picked up that same fandom like First Killer has in NA, like Daniel has. He was like clearly the best for a while in NA, and I feel like he's gotten a collection of fans. The same like for Khaled and some of the guys from EU. But those are the people who I think have the most rabid fan bases who like will support them no matter what. Moxie's actually a guy who Moxie and Rawas are guys who for a long time didn't have that, but now that they've proven themselves as like the top echelon with like Zen, Rawas, Moxie, that they've started to get more fandom. In fact, the most recent version of Rawas Moxie, which is like the match I've run the most times, from every level of viewership, became my peak viewership that I've ever had in the stream. And I think that was the Fear Fiesta, Rawas Moxie. And it was like, wow, the hype wasn't there for these guys before, but they've been so good for so long that they've cultivated the hype. So I think for the casual ones fan, you just have to be a player that is like the first name that comes up when someone says who's the best, because then that's all they're really absorbing, and they're like, okay, I've heard that because that guy's the very best.
Yep.
So yeah.
Well, you have come a long way. I'm sure if you reflect on like where the streak started versus now the talent that you get on a recurring basis, you kind of have all the top names. I would assume that was in some way a goal from the outset that you've kind of checked off now. Now that you are to the position that you are, how are you kind of, what does success look like for you? Are there specific goals that you're shooting for? Is it consistency? Is it having certain players? Is it having tournaments of a certain size or scale? Where are you kind of pointing the ship as you kind of head forward here?
That is a good question that maybe I should think about more. For the longest time, it's about getting as many people as possible.
Yeah.
I felt like I had gotten everybody. Recently, it happened again with Zen, because Zen just popped in and I had no connection with Zen at all. He was kind of siloed. And so I was like, shoot, I need to get Zen on. Like Zen is maybe the best player in the world right now. And so I had that struggle again, but I've been able to make the connection with Zen, which is nice. So then there's, I think, as far as like top players, I think you're right. I mean, I have at least a mild connection with anybody who might want to play. So what should I do? Well, I for a long time I also had the goal of running a tournament that was at max prize pool for before Psionics steps in and says, you can't do it by more without getting an official sponsorship, which at first was 5,000, which I hit, and then they upped it again. They upped it to 15,000. So I said, well, shoot. I mean, this has always been my goal, so I guess I got to run a 15,000 one, which I did, which was Fear Fest finale, I think, was the one that was 15,000. And so I've hit that mark. And so admittedly, I've pulled back on that. When I was searching for max prize pools, it was all while I wasn't paying myself. I don't know if I've talked about it here, but basically for a long time, Feer didn't pay Ben. Feer just kept all his content money separate and used it for tournaments and all that kind of stuff. And so after the $15,000 tournament, the new goal, which is not a great goal in the sense that it doesn't guide the content, which is bad, which I'm realizing as I respond to you. But the new goal is to potentially try and go full time. So use some of that money for paying myself and still being able to put out the content. So it's like almost like maintaining the level while not needing the money that I used before. So whether that's finding sponsorships for tournaments and that kind of stuff. But also, for the most part, the future sites or the planning out is not like a ton of time ahead. Other than the streak every day or like the 15,000, like the max prize pool tournament or getting every player like possible, those are clear goals that I feel like I've hit at this point. Now, and even when I was going for those max goals, it was much more short-sighted with like RLCS schedules and stuff. It's like, what can I do with the next month? What can be done with what I have available in the next month? Is it going to be a tournament? Is it going to be something else? And that's what guides me for the most part. So the big off season was like huge. I was like, wait, what am I going to do? But I thought to myself that something was going to happen. I just didn't expect it to be that available. So we're really going to have 3 months where nothing's happening and I can set up whatever I want. That just didn't seem like it was going to be true. And then a couple weeks after the off season or whatever, I got the message from Johnny that was like, Salt Mine 3 is going to happen. I'm like, okay, I expected something like this to happen. So now there's nothing for really me to plan. Salt Mine 3 is going to go like, I don't know how much to release, but basically Salt Mine 3 is going to cover the off season for the most part. So it's like, okay, I can run maybe something alongside that, but there's no fighting a Psionic sponsored one's tournament run by Johnny. It's just like that is going to be the premier thing. Like it's going to be hard to convince players probably to play any games outside of that. They're like, no, I've got just Salt Mine to worry about. So, yeah, for now, I don't know what the plan is after that. Usually I just try and shoot to see what I have available for the gaps in the schedule. I don't know what the new schedule for RLCS is going to look like. So hopefully, maybe I need to come up with a new kind of end goal for myself. Like run it. Like the problem is like a LAN is like a great idea of like a goal, but it's just so exponentially far ahead. I think the other stuff that I had planned, right? I'd love to run a $15,000 tournament. I hit that, but when you only have to play prize pool and you don't have to pay anything else, that's feasible. But like if I wanted to run a LAN, which is kind of like the next thing I'd want to do, it's like we're talking like 10x probably. The money I'd have to generate for that, which is just not going to happen. So I don't know where I'm going to pivot to. Just keeping the content solid, keeping putting out what I have so far. I guess that's the guide. Maybe if I could try and work to become a commentator in a bigger sense, that's kind of an avenue I haven't worked towards that I think could be a great supplement to content and stuff. Is if I could get more commentating gigs, or obviously by some miracle like work for RLCS, that would be great. And it'd be like there's more obvious, clear room for improvement in that avenue. I feel like than there is now with the Twitch stuff, which is doing well, but I don't know. I feel like I lack goals now that you say that.
No, I don't. I don't think so. I mean, I think it's important to have like to gotten to where you are, and also I think it's nice to just kind of take a breather. Like you have I think it's public, like some life things that are ahead. I think you talked about it in the video. A house on the way, a baby on the way. Congratulations, by the way. But
Thank you.
I think it's okay to like take a moment to pause. But this might be you talked around it, and if I could go to it, and it might be it's a personal question, but when you talk or think to yourself about the idea of going full time with this. Maybe it's a question of what is the conversation between Ben and Fear, but maybe a better way of asking the question is, what are the emotions that are tied up in that? Because for me, I've thought a lot about that, and I frankly am much further away from that reality than you are. But even I think about that, and it brings me a sense of anxiety, or even a sense of excitement of like being able to supplement your life in that way. What is kind of wrapped up in that discussion or that shift for you?
So I have life pretty easy. I don't know. I've never tried to say that like I've struggled through life, which I don't know if I feel guilty for it, but I've had a pretty easy upbringing that like guided me. Like my family was well off enough that I wasn't like super worried. So I
Likewise.
got into college and got my job and stuff, and then on top of that, I have even bigger like safety net now, which is that my wife is just about done studying to be a doctor, like emergency med doctor.
Yeah.
So I think that the world should work such that if a family has one emergency med doctor in it, they should be okay. Like I want to believe that the world could be okay if I had no job at all. So in that way, I feel like there's a massive safety net for me now. Um, so for the most part, I'm just excited. I think that can live fairly frugally too. Like I don't think I have a ton of uh I don't know what the word is, like a high standard of living. Maybe I would be
Big
down to like accept a lower
expenses.
one
Yeah.
just to be able to do it. But the reality is, and I would have already been working full time and been excited about it, but I just have a little bit more obligations now, like we just mentioned, that I can't just do it really casually. But for me, I'm excited. I think that my life has been very easy, but I felt like almost like the path was out from the very beginning. It's like, here, go to college, get your degree, get a job. And I followed it, right down the center line. And so the idea that I take a risk as big as not having some, secure 9 to 5 job and instead just doing content and like streaming for a living, like that's such an insane, like dream life, that the idea of that being like the first time I've ever branched from like the safest possible path is to me exciting, because it's like, man, if I fail, like if it just doesn't work at all, I will go back, or I'll try and go back, and then I expect 20 years from now, 40 years from now, the main thing I talk to everybody about, like the main thing I'm excited to talk about is like, oh man, I tried to do this cool thing and I failed, but like it was still awesome that I got to even try. That's how I think I'd like to think back at it, even if I were to have it not work out. Which I think that there's some level of like with Rocket League, with my success being tied to Rocket League, like the game could just die, and I could just have no choice.
Yeah.
And then maybe I have to go back and do something else. But to me, it'll be such a unique life experience, and a life experience that I think so far has been pretty boring. And I'm not trying to complain, right? Because like I said, very easy. I'm not trying to say like, woe is me. It's been very straightforward and very comfortable. But I don't know. It seems exciting to take the risk. That's why I want to do it soon. And I think I hopefully will, but maybe I never will. I don't know. Like you said, I have at least a couple months to not be worrying about that stuff. Big life changes happening. Then maybe I can think about it a bit more.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you to get there because this was your words, as you said, you're very boring. So for you to be able to
Yeah,
spice that
it's
up in
true.
some way
It's true.
is I'm excited for
True.
you, But I know that we're getting we're closing in on the hour here, and I don't want to keep you too long. But just one last thing before you get going, you talked about this long off season that we're about to head into here. There's still a lot that is up in the air, but I thought an interesting way to gauge your perspective, because there is way too much to actually talk about with everything that's going on. If we were to isolate people that you're interested in to the contestants from Fear Fiesta, is there a specific player that you are just interested to see where they land at the beginning of next season? Who is it and why?
Okay, let me pull up Fear Fiesta real quick. Listen,
Yeah.
I have a good memory, but when I'm put on the spot. Okay. I think I'm looking through these guys right now. We know the answer for Vatira,
Correct.
so it's hard to say. That might have been an answer for him. We think, let's see, almost no one else we know the answer for. I think that the most interesting to me is Jack and Chronic, who both played Fear Fiesta, and who they're going to add. To me, I think the rumors and the team that makes sense to me too, like without even hearing about anybody else, is of course First Killer's a free agent.
Yep.
I think that them three together, I think First Killer with Jack makes a lot of sense in terms of. It feels to me like Jack brings the elements that a good team needs off the pitch that is potentially lacking with a team like everyone else is talking about, which is Beast Mode First Killer Daniel, right? Like that's one of the other offered teams. To me, that team's lacking it feels like, I don't know these players, so I can't say for sure, but it feels like it's lacking a level of, I guess maybe a leader is the word I'm looking for, or like somebody who can keep them grounded and keep them on track, which I feel like Jack does. And all of this is speculation, which I hate when people talk about like as if they know for sure. It's like, I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes.
I
It's
know,
just the
I
sense
know
that
for
I get.
sure. We can talk freely. Yeah.
But yeah, I get the sense that Jack Chronic First Killer would work out better. So the people I'm looking at on this list, if I had to pick one, I mean, a ton of people are, I guess Vatira joined Atto. We don't know where Khaled's going to go. That's kind of interesting, but I don't think Khaled's potential future team would have as much success or be as interesting, especially for North American fans, as the prospect of Jack Chronic First Killer. Now, that hasn't been confirmed or even in any way been more than just people, I think, wishing that it would happen, or saying it could be good if it happened. So we'll see if it does. But I guess who joins in with Jack and Chronic if it's First Killer. If it's not First Killer, then I'm maybe less interested. I mean, maybe then I care about what happens to Daniel Beast Mode. But neither of them were in Fear Fiesta. So Jack and Chronic. Is their third going to be First Killer? That's what's most interesting, I think.
I've heard the same speculation as you, and I had talked about this on Wave Dash podcast and basically had given the same thoughts that you had, where Jack Chronic First Killer, that is a pretty potent duo. Not only do I like them online, but I like them on LAN as well, and I think that's what would be lacking with a Daniel Beast Mode comp. To be completely honest with you, I hope they just keep calm on that roster. I love that trio. I thought they looked awesome at Gamers 8. I feel like they were kind of, sold a bill of false goods to the community, having only seen them in spring, which is double elim. How could we possibly like feel as though we know how good they are? They won one of the regional events, so I hope those are the two kind of that we get. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Even though we've kind of seen how it's gonna close out, I think Vatira and Atau teaming up is it's a spicy one. That seems like a juggernaut.
Yeah, actually, the whole team, Vatira, Atto, Rise, they all played Fear Fiesta.
Yeah, Rise as well.
Yeah.
Who is one of my favorite players over the course of last season. So we're gonna see how it all shakes out. I know that you're gonna be attached to Salt Mine as that goes in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that has been announced.
Nor do I, so we don't have to speak on it if you're
cool.
concerned. Yeah. But we may or may not see you around that. It's, again, just like with players, all speculation. But I'm going to be linking socials below. People can obviously find you streaming on Twitch. You're, of course, on Twitter as well. As we kind of sign off here, the mic is yours. Anything you want to say to the people, things to promote, etc.
If any Fear fans happened to stop in on the podcast, I would say follow Bellaire.
Yes.
I feel like I've followed you around for a bit, whether it's like stuff on Twitter or YouTube videos and stuff, and I think it's I think you have good takes, and I think it's worth sticking around. I mean, it's the reason why I was totally down to do this podcast. So if Fear fans are around, maybe check out a video or two or something that didn't just have me in it, because I think it's worth your while.
I appreciate that.
That'll be my shout out.
To be transparent, I didn't know that we had any connective tissue. I thought I was firing a blank DM in the dark to you, being like, hey, all right, so that's cool. Look at that. Look at us existing in the same. I had said earlier, my 1 week streak and your 1,000-day streak were the same. We're even closer than I thought, Look at that.
Everyone else is my people who do other streaks are like, I'm pretty sure from what I understand from remembering your videos, like I think you put in a way more work than I necessarily have to for mine. Like I find a good either show match or like a replay or something, and I comment it over in like one take, and there's no editing and there's no all the post stuff. Like it's so I don't know. It's much more impressive to do like an edited video for us any sort of streak. That's like way harder. Like,
Oh my
I
gosh.
pretty much don't edit. So
Well, that's like I think then in that way the ultimate streak is Lethamir, who has been going on
oh
for
yeah.
I think continues to put out a video every day and they're like edited and all of that. So
Yeah.
we both have something to aspire to. But
He's got a team. That's the copium.
that's what it
He's got a team of people who help him out. And so
that's what it is. It's even more embarrassing that I have a team of 7. We're really over here just tripping over ourselves. But again, Fear, thanks for giving me your time and talking to the people and coming on. I'm sure we'll stay in touch in the future and excited to see what the off season holds. So thanks again, man.
Yeah, it's great being here.
All right, later, everybody.